As I've said to you before, I think the hip drop tackle, because it's occurred, I guess, more often, and it's increased the amount of injuries to lower extremities, it's been a byproduct to me of the way the game has evolved. It's more spread out. Players are taking worse angles because it's more spread out, because you have more skilled players in space, and it's caused them to then have to adjust to just trying to get a guy down on the ground. I don't know that it's malicious in any way. And I think that's the tough part, is when you see the NFLPA come out and recommend that they keep this tackle still in the game because it seems to be more of an accident than anything else, and the NFL owners just do whatever they want, it highlighted two things for me. The direction of this league is always going to be driven by the owners. It's really the only league that I look at and say where the owners have that much leverage and power, and the players are helpless. Because this is an instance where, again, like the other side of the conversation, the ones that are actually being impacted by it, there's a lot of guys who don't want to see it banned, understand that it's not intentional, and want to have a part of the game. Now, there's some players, too, who understand why it's a penalty and why they're trying to ban it. They get that. There's guys who have been injured by it. And I'm not saying that they don't have similar viewpoints to the owners and wanting to ban it, but if we're being honest with ourselves, it is going to be incredibly hard to add another subjective call to the officials, which is what we're doing. And if you don't think there's going to be more drama, if you don't think there's going to be more arguments to be made about what's a hip drop tackle, as the NFL has even tried to now clarify the difference between the two. So what they're trying to outlaw is essentially the type where a player jumps, up and puts all his weight on the back of a ball carrier as he's trying to bring him down, and then drops down his hips on the back of his legs. Yeah. Like anything else, there's varying degrees of that. So I think this highlights probably what is, I guess if your league is battling this issue, it's probably a good thing for your league. But it seems like the NFL at times almost is too careful with the way they go about trying to adjust or change the game. But yet it never seems to impact it once the season comes around. Ratings are up as high as ever. Most watched Super Bowl this past year. And so it always reverts me back to if it's not broke, why are we trying to fix it? I mean, that seems to be like an age-old adage that I don't know if we talk about enough, but I don't know that we got to the point of the hip drop tackle that we really needed to make a change this season. Yeah. I mean, was that an overwhelming thing every Sunday? You walked away going, man, they need to get rid of that hip drop tackle, don't they?
And that's interesting to position it that way, because for me, I never called any tackle a specific tackle.
Right.
I just tackled, Q. Like, the bottom line was the one thing I knew not to do was to drop my head. And you want to know what's crazy? The only reason why I was taught not to drop my head and I subscribed to it was because that's where your body's going to go. Wherever your eyes are, that's where your body's going to go. If you have your eyes down, I'm going to miss. If I drop my head at the last second to try to make contact with somebody, there's a chance that they could stiff arm me, they could get out of my way, I could miss. I lost vision, I lost sight of where my target was. That was the only reason, not because I was going to get hurt, not because I was going to get a concussion or I could break my neck or anything like that. Now, as I became older in the game, I started to realize that, of course, you don't want to take that type of damage onto your head by making contact that way, and that's why I wore a cowboy collar, and I would turtle. I called it turtling. That's the only terminology I ever.
So not when you have to go to the bathroom.
No,
like it's
the turtle heading was
okay.
Basically like sinking your head back into your cowboy collar, which stabilized my head, and so I could make contact. And my head, not go all kinds of different directions because I had nothing supporting my head and my neck. That was pretty much it. I just started thinking about, like, okay, they're creating all of these terms for how you tackle and different things like that. Let me tell you something. I was 6'3", some may say 6'4", I don't know. I was 6'3", and I was 255 pounds in the league, and I struggled to be able to not only catch up to a Fred Taylor or to a Michael Pittman, but the force of the impact when you make contact with a Pittman, when you make contact with a Fred Taylor or a Jerome Bettis or a Lorenzo Neal or Sam Gash, you're just trying to get them down. That is it. That's it. You're trying to get them to the ground, and I think what's getting lost in all of this, which I think this is probably the first year we'll see it, and it'll probably be very, very significant, is how difficult it's going to be to tackle at this point in time. And I know the people, we probably have NFL people listening to our show, and they'll probably sit there and be cringing and stuff like that. But you know what? I was a part of heads-up tackling. I was a part of teaching fundamentals of tackling. I'm very deep and very well versed in how you teach proper tackling, Q.
Right.
And I just feel like there's no perfect scenario to tackling, and that's what, if you can understand that there's no perfect scenario, meaning that tackling is always about improvising. And improvising means you're like MacGyver. You got to figure out what's the best way to get an end result with what you have.
It's the Serengeti out there.
It's the Serengeti, bro. Yeah. Now, I never heard anybody say this is out of bounds. Lions, you can't take gazelles down the same way you take wildebeest down. You can't take, elephants down the same way you take, a hyena down. Like, no hip dropping, no none of that. Like, I don't know, man. I know it's about participation, and I know it's about all those other things, but I just feel like at some point, just it's football, it's full contact. When you're ready to play. That's it.
Yeah. I'm with you on that, and we've talked about this before. Like, my viewpoint is just as an offensive player and watching how the game has evolved and changed from how they try to teach tackling. As I really do feel this is a byproduct of the rugby style tackle. It's caused players to take poor angles, or when they are attacking the hips and the way they try to get their head to the side of the ball carrier, it's caused them to, at times, if they're behind the player, they have no other choice other than to try to wrap their heads on the wrong side. And their only way they can try to stop their momentum is trying to use their weight, their body, and then drop.
Yes.
And it ends up dropping on the legs or the lower extremities of that ball carrier.
And it is what it is. I mean, I honestly speaking, to me, it just is what
second,
it is.
Third man is what you said when you tackle.
That's when you can drive through. But what we're talking about, that's more bulldogging. That's like if you've ever been to, or DDTing, if you ever been to like a rodeo, like you're not like have all of these rules for how you're going to take down a cow. A young what is it, a steer or whatever. Like,
I don't know. You're the one who's been to Cheyenne. I don't have belt buckles like that.
Yeah, I'm gonna get a new one too. All I know is this: there are certain ways you take bulls down, and there are some bulls that are on the football field, and we're going to see how that looks. Like, imagine you can't hip drop, Henry. You can't hip drop, or like cowboy collaring was interesting because until Roy started flipping onto your legs, like there shouldn't have been no problem with cowboy collaring somebody. I mean, really, because most times a lot of these guys are too fast for you to catch them. So if I can get a hold of something that is a lever of taking away your balance, then I'm going to do it. I was known for cowboy collaring, horse collaring guys. But, when Roy started bringing his body around and swinging his legs into the back of their legs, then they felt a certain type of way. And I got that. I understand it. But I'm just saying, I wonder how many of the people that are making these decisions have really ever tried to tackle on a consistent basis.
No, they haven't.
You know,
again, it's part of the evolution of the game too. I keep going back to bigger guys like tight ends that you get out in space, and those bigger bodies are running backs that you get out in space who are called to catch the football more out of the backfield. That's where you get it. You don't have those straight head up tackles anymore. You've got angles that you got to play with.
Yeah.
And again, it's a byproduct of how the game's changed, and they're trying to make the game safer. I get that. I understand that I am a former quarterback, so I don't really get to have an opinion in all of this. But you as a defender, I think I'm more interested in it. And once again, the defenders have to adjust. You're like Bill Bellamy and How to Be a Player.
Yeah.
True players adjust, he says.
Yeah,
but
that's what they do.
That's what defenders have to be.
Yep, and they're going to have to continue to. But you're going to see. I think this rule here is going to create so much thought in your approach that there's going to be a lot of. I just don't know how upset people can get when their defenses falter and some of the things that happen in the game, because I just think that it's creating such an area of concern, an area of confusion, and a state of what the hell am I supposed to do for defenders, especially, I would say 100%, especially for smaller defenders.